The Fuel Good Factor is sponsored by the One-to-One Diet. Take your first step towards a healthier new you. Order the One-to-One Diet Taster Pack today to discover the delightful range of nutritionally complete products and start your weight loss journey.
The Fuel Good Factor with Michelle Livings.
Yes, welcome to the Fuel Good Factor, serving up news, views and expert opinion from some of the leading figures in nutrition, health and well-being, one sip or episode at a time, as well as bringing you emotional and inspirational stories from the One-to-One Diet Slimmer archive. Today's special guest is nutrition expert Mark Gilbert, who's going to be giving us loads of insights on how we can fuel ourselves for a healthy lifestyle and help anyone on their weight loss journey. We also have another life-changing slimmer story from Teg Turner, who had to battle with her anxiety.
When COVID hit in particular, that's when my anxiety really went through the roof, and that's where eating and alcohol would sort of then relieve my anxiety. I was like, I can't look after myself anymore. Like, how can I look after the patients on the ward?
But before we get to all of that, let's take a quick look at this week's healthy headlines.
Healthy headlines.
And the first story that caught my eye, especially given this week's guest, is that too much coffee may raise your risk of stroke, but tea may lower it. Now, there's always some sort of headline regarding coffee. This is the latest one. And of course, what you eat and drink can have a big impact on your blood vessels when it comes to cardiovascular health, which is what this is about. So 2 new studies provide insight into how to make healthy beverage choices, with tea and water appearing to lead the pack ahead of coffee and fizzy drinks, which kind of makes sense already. And this is particularly when it comes to the risk of stroke. Frequent consumption of carbonated beverages and fruit juice increase the risk of stroke, one analysis found. Another showed that drinking more than 4 cups of coffee a day also increased the risk of stroke, while tea lowered the risk. And there was no increased stroke risk for lower levels of coffee consumption, incidentally, which is really good news. I'm very grateful about that. Now, drinking 3 to 4 cups a day of black tea, including good old breakfast tea, was linked to a 29% overall lower risk of stroke, so that's good. And green tea, consumed 3 to 4 cups a day, was linked to a 27% lower overall risk of stroke. And I have to say, I love my morning matcha, so that's really good news. One final one for you, and again, it's to do with diet, it's to do with food. The exact time Brits find themselves uncontrollably hungry has been revealed. This was in The Independent. 1 in 4 Brits find themselves uncontrollably hungry by 10:30 a.m., researchers found. A study of 2,000 adults found they typically snack twice a day, with sausage rolls, crisps, biscuits and bananas the most popular choices. But 27% get the munchies by mid-morning, and a third even got out of bed for a midnight snack. Now, other popular treats include chocolate bars, nuts, cake and crackers. Now, here's the thing. A spokesman from Walls, which commissioned the research as part of its When Hunger Calls, Grab a Walls campaign, said sometimes a snack can be an absolute saviour to your day, as the research has shown. And I have to be honest here, therein lies the problem, really. The food industry commissioning research designed to bolster their narrative and, of course, their sales, I would say, on that one. This study also found 23% of adults don't usually have breakfast, with 36% of those claiming they are more prone to snacking as a result. So I'm not at all surprised about that. So those are your healthy headlines.
Healthy headlines.
Now, I'm sure today's guest would have something to say about all of those headlines. Whether we'll have time to pick up on it, I'm not. We've got so much to talk about. But let me tell you a little bit about Mark Gilbert. Mark is the One-to-One Diet Nutritionist. But he's done so much more. His career is incredibly varied. He's actually been involved in nutrition for over 30 years. He holds multiple certifications in sports nutrition, exercise science, and also in pharmaceuticals. Mark is also science officer for TDMR Europe. And formerly, Mark was vice chair of the European Specialist Sports Nutrition Alliance. He's also on the advisory board and columnist for Muscle and Fitness magazine, Flex magazine, and Muscle Insider magazine. Not only that, he's co-founder of Fitness Genes Limited. And then as a consultant, Mark has advised dozens of multinational companies, including Tesco, Lion Capital, and also the Canadian Armed Forces. And additionally, Mark has worked with the NHS, the police, and the court. Mark, my goodness, that's an impressive CV. And that was just a brief summary that I've got there. That's not even the half of it. It's fantastic.
Well, I had to get up to something over these last 30 years or so, yeah. So
yeah. Well,
it's been a ride. It's been a great ride. Learned a lot of things and
super interesting.
Constantly changing my opinions on as new information comes out and trying to keep on top of things.
Yes.
That could be a full-time job on its own.
Absolutely. I mean, so many different things there, really, really varied. But I've got a few questions for you. And I thought I'd start by saying, well, you're the nutritionist for the one-to-one diet. And before I ask you about that, what kind of training and other work experience have you had previous to this job? I mentioned some of them there, but sort of some of the ones that sort of led you here where you are today.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been interested in health and sports and exercise and nutrition. So I went to York University, not the one here, the one in Canada,
right?
For exercise physiology, and got a certificate from that. I only went for a year and a half, and then I went to nutrition. I did a 4-year nutrition degree, a Bachelor of Applied Science at Ryerson University, also in Toronto.
Yeah.
So that was my kind of education, and one of my very good friends to this day, I went to uni with him. He was also into sport nutrition. So we kind of wanted to find the secrets to getting the best recovery from our workouts and getting a little bit more muscular and maybe see if we can get a six pack, all those kinds of things, which I've been working on my whole life pretty much. And,
I think
and sometimes I almost get there and sometimes I don't. But yeah, so he was a big inspiration. And then I was fortunate enough to work for some up and coming companies that became very big. So got to wear a lot of hats. And see how the marketing works and how the other departments fuse together to create products and advertising messages and formulating products has been amazing too. So I've formulated probably hundreds of products for various different companies because most were nutritional supplements. Right. I mean, I've done dossiers for things like chia seeds.
Oh, love chia seeds.
Yeah, a lot. So and everything else and all the way along to hardcore bodybuilding products like these things that get you jacked before you go into the gym, so you all have lots of energy and things like that.
So your job, obviously, with the one-to-one diet is going to be super interesting as well. Very different from that, but super interesting. What kinds of things do you do for the company?
Well, I've got a lot of roles with the company, and any one of them could probably be a full-time job. But so I do a lot of it's PR. Right. I'm kind of in some sense a commercial nutritionist. So I'll put content together on various topics, maybe something that's new in the news, something that's related obviously to losing weight or health or the way losing weight improves health, the kinds of products we do, the nutritionally complete kind of products the company does. Just anything that's new that's published in that area. We've had a lot of research on our products. One of the reasons I joined the company was because when I did my research about the company to see what the role was like, this company's done hundreds and almost 100 studies on various aspects of nutrition and how the diet works. So that's and I also do things like I have to keep up on the research and the trends that are going on. Of course, that could be 10 people's full-time job. I have to ensure the products and the way we deliver the products and the way that the plan works. I have to make sure that if we change everything still works and aligns, and there's nothing that might catch us out that might make the diet less effective or dangerous. Right. I have to answer some questions that. Some of the more delicate or technical questions from our consultants and from dieters, those will get sent to me, and I'll just obviously find out what the facts are and get back to them. And so those are some of the main things I do, and I could do one aspect of each of those things in a single day, or I could work on one thing for a whole week or 2 weeks. So it's
interesting though, because that means you've got so much variation. Are you involved much in the actual development of the products the nutritional products for one-to-one diet?
Yeah, I've been formulating products in the nutrition space for over 30 years. So I'm pretty comfortable doing it, obviously. Hopefully I've learned most of what you need to know. I don't get involved in the actual, I'll give out the broad formulation of the products.
Okay.
What kind of macronutrient and micronutrient ratios we need,
really
things like
important,
that.
Yeah.
But after I do that basic overview, then it gets our product team and the technical team take it from there. And because I would be rubbish trying to actually make a product that tasted good myself.
But you give
That's
all
not my
that.
skill set. Not my skill set.
No skill set. But you're right at the top there, giving the sort of fundamental base of what's needed in all of that.
Yeah, kind of starting the process saying, here's the constraints.
This is what you
now
need.
Let's make some products that fit those areas. Yeah.
And then do you get to do the tasting?
Yeah, I do.
Importantly.
Sometimes. We do a lot of tasting in-house, not just myself, but everyone gets involved. And
Brilliant.
Sometimes, especially if there's a certain product coming out, we get a bit excited. And we're like, oh, can't wait to try this. Yeah,
New flavors.
Yeah, and there's all kinds of stuff we're trying all the time. So you get to play around with that.
Brilliant.
It's good.
Yeah, good. So what do you think are the biggest mistakes then when it comes to people trying to lose weight?
I think the big thing is there's some basics that you should do to start off with that can get you 50, 80% of the way there. And then everything else is 20%. But a lot of people focus on like a news headline and they say, oh, I'll do that little hack and then that'll help me lose some weight. When in fact, they're not doing all the basics yet.
Right.
So really you've got to you got to start with the basics. Like, I mean, the easiest one, if I was going to tell someone one thing they can do that's going to help them lose weight, not be hungry all the time, just eat protein at every meal and snack. Eat a good, healthy dose of protein. And as you get older, you should eat more protein, a higher bolus, they call it, a larger serving.
Yeah.
Because we get less efficient at signaling our body to grow and repair our muscles and maintain our immunity.
It's so important,
so that's a
isn't
massive
it?
one. Yeah.
I'm so glad you said that because I've been hearing a lot of stuff about protein and I try and up it. And sometimes, what are the easiest ways to do that? Because, for example, I don't eat meat. I do eat fish, but I don't eat meat. So if you're not a meat eater, that can obviously take a big chunk of it out. What I tend to do is I'll put a scoop of protein powder, for example, in my smoothie. That's one thing I try and do. What would be your tips for sort of trying to increase that protein?
Yeah. Protein powder is an easy one. I use a neutral protein powder. So if I don't have time to make something that I really want to eat, I just throw that into whatever I'm eating and I know I've got my protein. Eggs.
Yes.
And I was going to say, if you're going to have your protein in the morning with breakfast. Don't have a bunch of starchy stuff.
Okay.
You can have that too. Obviously,
After.
you've got to calories are always important. But have your protein. And studies have shown that if you have eggs as opposed to like a bagel or something, you're going to be much less hungry throughout the day. So you're going to have an easier time sticking to your diet because you can be following the best diet in the world on paper. But if you can't stick to it because you're hungry all the time, you're out of luck.
You're already losing, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly.
You're just never going to get on top of it.
Exactly. And I guess a really easy one, you actually mentioned have your protein first. If you have your protein before you have your starchy or sugary foods, your blood sugar doesn't go as high.
Precisely.
So
you
you
don't
get
a
moderate blood sugar response.
Yeah, you don't
which
get
is
that dip
Yes.
where then you feel quite tired sometimes. You have that crash. Or like you said, you get hungry again.
We
were talking about
it can
snacking
affect
earlier,
all those
actually.
things. That's right. Yeah.
In my
and remember
headlines.
when sugar when you've got too much sugar in your blood, especially if you're doing it all the time and you're having a snack or two and 3 meals a day, that's a lot of different blood sugar spikes. When you got a lot of blood sugar in your blood floating around, and we call it glucose, is the sugar in your blood. You could almost think of that as being like seawater near an old car. It's rusting
Like
everything slowly.
That's a really good analogy.
Just as a memory aid, that's a good way to think about it. You don't want chronically high blood sugar.
No.
So just eating your protein first. Now, again, this is more one of those hacks.
That's a hack, but the
it's not gonna
fundamentals.
help you. Yes, but if you do that consistently, and expose yourself to less blood sugar over time, you're probably going to get a result.
So any other mistakes then? So we've got the protein as a sort of fundamental. Think more about increasing protein intake. That's a great one. Any other tips for people?
Oh yeah.
I'm sure you've got plenty.
Yeah, I mean, one that's basic and it sounds obvious, but a lot of people don't do it. Have a plan. Have a plan for the week. Like especially if you're going somewhere that you're not accustomed to going, where you don't have. Where you don't know where you can get some good food that fits in with your diet. So have a plan. Like the best fitness athletes and bodybuilders, these people that get up on the stage and they have perfectly ripped abs, they make all their food on a Sunday usually, and they put it in the fridge and the freezer. Meal prep. If you don't trust yourself to not go to Greg's or something like that for lunch. If you don't trust
Pop by.
yourself and you don't have a backup plan where you've got something
Yes.
convenient you can grab,
Yep.
you're going to be in trouble. So that would just plan. With anything, if you were starting a business and you didn't plan, you wouldn't have a business for very long.
Very true.
So if you're trying to achieve something, it's like if you don't have a plan as an athlete to train, you're not going to win, because there's people out there that are just as good as you that are going to have a plan.
Brilliant.
Always
Yeah,
have a plan.
great advice.
Sounds obvious, but
it does.
You'd
but
be
it's
amazed
so
how many
easy.
people.
Yeah, and especially with life when it's so busy and you've got family, you do forget these things. So brilliant. So the mistake of sort of not having enough protein, not planning ahead. Any other mistakes that you found that people make?
Yeah, people tend to wolf down their food and not think too much, and you tend to eat more that way. If you eat slowly, you allow the hunger signal to arrive in your gut and to be triggered in your brain and to arrive at your gut.
Interesting. Okay.
So if you eat slowly, you tend to eat a lot less food. So have a glass of water, talk a little bit in between each bite.
Yeah.
That's why it's probably people that eat their meal at the table every day are healthier than people that don't. I mean, there's a lot of other reasons for that, but that's one of the reasons. And the social aspect itself is obviously something
it's so
positive
important.
too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Another one is don't drink your calories. Like milk is fine probably because milk's very nutrient dense.
Yeah. Well, you've got the protein, haven't you, in the milk as well? Calcium.
Exactly. And I mean, obviously we do shakes that are fortified, so they're very nutrient dense. They're high in protein, so that's fine. But
what are you talking
don't
about?
Drink orange juice.
There we go.
I mean, you can have orange juice once a day. If you just can't be bothered ever having an orange because you're just too lazy to peel it or something, you don't like the flavor or whatever, have a glass of orange juice, a small one. That's fine to get your vitamin C and your phytochemicals and your healthy
But
fix.
maybe don't make that the first thing that you have.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people would at breakfast.
Yeah, and it's not ideal. Anything you drink that has calories in it is just too easy to get too many calories down too quickly. And it's not going to fill you up probably.
Is that because it's the sugar in it, really?
Probably, sure. It's just, I mean, most people already eat too much sugar. So if you're drinking sugar calories too, that's just it's just going to exacerbate the problem. So eat something, that's got 0 calorie or low calorie sweetener, or just have water, or have coffee or tea with sweetener.
Not too much coffee, though, based on that headline from earlier.
Too much. Interestingly, people that drink coffee live longer than people that don't drink coffee. And people that drink more coffee live longer than people that drink less coffee. So,
exactly.
So that one got me a bit angry.
Yeah, but I think they were talking about excessive. It was over 4 cups for a start, and I do love my green tea. But that was quite interesting as well about alcohol as well, which was another of the headlines, because that's another way people can drink calories, can't they?
Well, alcohol is a double whammy because it's got those calories. It's got 7 calories per gram, so it's between the amount of calories and fat and carbs and protein.
Wow.
But also you get disinhibition, they call it.
Yeah.
Which just means you get a bit loose and you think, oh, that food looks nice, I'll have that.
Yeah.
So it increases your hunger.
Of course it does.
It decreases your ability to make sensible, front brain decisions.
Yeah, the kebab van at the end of the night.
Exactly. Yeah.
Always looks good, doesn't it, after a few?
I've done it. We've all done it. Walk out of a pub late at night or something, you're hungry and you just eat the first rubbish that smells good. And
it's true,
we've all been there.
That's a classic example, isn't it? It just shows you exactly what happens. Whereas,
Precisely.
if you were a bit more sober and thinking about it, you probably at least would give it a second thought, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Even if you did go for it, you'd be thinking about it, hopefully.
You almost certainly would, yes.
Yeah, no, some really good tips.
So the 2 other things I'd say is exercise. And again, if you exercise after you eat, this is like eating your protein first. If you exercise after you eat, you again moderate that blood sugar response.
That's interesting, because I've heard some things where it's suggested that you should maybe exercise fasted, and sometimes that's better for men than women. And I do tend to do that a couple of times. Like, for example, I do a spinning class, and I do have a little bit of protein in my coffee. I put a bit of protein, but I don't, to be honest, I don't like exercising on a full stomach.
I'm the same. Yeah.
So how do you balance that out then?
That's a tough one though, because some people I know who are like, international level power lifters.
Yeah, that's not
They
me.
will never train on an empty stomach. They'll always, not all of them, but
Really?
some that I know like to eat. And I couldn't train after a big meal.
No chance. I couldn't.
I'd
It made
feel
me
like I was
ill.
dragging an anchor around. But
indigestion.
So again, like every nutrition and exercise advice, everyone's different. See what
so
works for you.
unique.
Generally, you should at least eat at least 2 hours before you train for most people, because otherwise and when you eat, you're diverting a lot of blood and fluids towards your gut, because your gut needs to digest things.
Absolutely.
It needs energy.
Yeah.
Your gut takes up a lot of energy. So it's hard to imagine how, at least for most people, you wouldn't be taking some energy away from what could otherwise be diverted to your muscles. So you're doing two things at once.
Exactly.
You're doing two energetically costly things at once.
Right.
And you can't do both ideally, probably. Although some people seem to train incredibly well on the full stomach. So again, you can't make an overall blanket statement about almost anything in nutrition.
But your advice would be if you want to have something, it's recommended to have something.
Yeah.
But just make sure maybe you have it 2 hours before would be the advice.
Yeah. And this is, if you're regular Joe, you're not trying to win a bodybuilding contest or something. You're not trying to put on massive muscle. Eating after your meal helps you clear that blood sugar. And of course, exercise in general. Exercise is not that great for weight loss. That's been shown. So if you look at all the best studies, I'll explain.
Yeah.
If you look at all the best studies on exercise, and these are studies where they supervise the exercise, so they know they did it, and it was good training most of the time. And some of these studies were 6 months and more. So very, very, very good studies. The average weight loss was about 4 or 5 pounds. 4 or 5 pounds.
Is that all?
Now there is a proviso to that. There is a proviso. So what probably happened is these people gained some muscle and lost some fat. So maybe they lost 3 pounds of fat and gained 1 pound of muscle. They're 4 pounds of fat and 2 pounds of muscle. So it's a bit misleading, but it's still nothing close to what a good like studies we do on our diet. People lose between 1.5 and 3 stone.
Right. So that's
in
proper
8 to 12
significant weight loss, and that's
you'll never get that from exercise, certainly, and you won't get that from most diets.
That's quite sort of radical. That's quite, I think a lot of people would be quite shocked at hearing that.
Yeah.
So really exercise, obviously we know there are so many benefits of exercise,
hugely.
we're already talking about it, but really it's something that you should be doing in addition to the fundamental thing, which is looking at your nutrition and what you're eating.
As they say in the kind of the fitness bodybuilding community, abs are made in the kitchen. And not
in mine, they're not.
It is the most important thing. As far as exercise, though, it depends. It depends what your goal is, of course.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So,
but if
exercise
weight
maintains weight loss better than it. So for maintaining your weight loss, exercise is fabulous.
Right. And any particular type of weight loss, or just anything really?
Well, I mean, with exercise, we usually say, if you don't really exercise that much, start off with walking.
Yeah.
And just who knows you might end up going to the gym 5-6 days a week, but walking is going to get you a good start for health wise too. It's going to get you mostly there, and it doesn't have the downside risk, especially if you're overweight.
Yeah.
Like some people are really, they'll decide they're going to exercise.
Yeah.
And the next day they walk 4 miles.
Yeah.
And they haven't walked 4 miles since they were in high school.
Yeah.
and you start
Baby
doing that every
steps.
day, and you start getting, even though it's just walking, if you start doing that too much, too soon, too often, you're going to get an injury often or something like that. Or
just be defeated really before you've even started.
That's true. Some people blow them.
It's just too much.
Yeah, they blow
or you just
themselves
won't enjoy it because it was too much like hard work and you put off. So before we move on, anything else? We've talked about exercise. Were there any other weight loss
for most people, almost everyone will do better if they get support. So, and that's what our diet's based on, is that we have the consultant model where you have a one-to-one relationship and you give support. Most people do a lot better. And that's why, ideally, if you see your doctor, you want to see them one-on-one. You don't want to see them with a group. Nope. You see your dietitian one-on-one, if you can get one these days. You see, any of these kinds of relationships when it comes to especially behavior change things, support is the best. Is the best avenue to being successful.
Yeah.
And we get these long-term. We've got 4-year studies now showing you can maintain 100% on average. 100% of the weight loss in some of our studies for 4 years.
That's
I don't know of any other diet that's ever published anything close to 100% maintenance of weight loss for 4 years. So that's quite a remarkable
it's really
achievement.
impressive.
Yeah.
And also we were mentioning earlier on about how things are so personalised, and I suppose that's where it comes down to with the one-to-one diet as well, that it's this personalized nutrition, if you like, which is, I think it's where everything's going when it comes to health, and whether it's medicine, whether it's diet, I think supplementation, I think it's all going to come down to personalization.
A big problem in medicine these days is everything has guidelines, and that those guidelines say treat everyone exactly the same. So someone could come to your office and look perfectly fit, and another person could be the same height and weight, but not be very fit at all and look terrible. And if those two people's blood work and everything looks the same, they're going to treat those people exactly the same. And that's
doesn't make
just
sense.
preposterous. I mean, so personalized nutrition is probably one of the few things that every good nutritionist agrees on is nutrition has to be personalized. And if you Googled personalized nutrition, like our company's been doing a form of that for 40 years now.
Yeah.
If you Google personalized nutrition today, you'll get millions of hits. If you Googled that 15 or 20 years ago, you might just get a question mark come up. They wouldn't know what it meant. So that's a big thing that we've realized that you give 10 people the same diet, you get 10 different results.
Absolutely. And I suppose that's where the one-to-one diet really was quite ahead of its time. You just mentioned they've been doing it for 40 years and we're talking about it now.
It is amazing.
That's quite...
Yeah, our founder, Dr. Alan Howard, he was doing research way back in the 60s trying to find the perfect diet. And this is when obesity rates were like 2% of the population. So he was the pioneer. I mean, he did the first obesity journal, the International Journal of Obesity. That was mainly him that got that going. So it's our founder was a pioneer. The diet's a pioneer. I tried to improve some of the steps we have when I first came to the company, and I gave up not long after. I looked at all the new behavior change research, and a lot of it's explained differently these days. But I looked at the fundamentals, and I couldn't improve it. So I was glad to see that actually. But
less work for you.
Less work for me, and it meant we were already doing things right.
Exactly.
So and whoever designed the diet did it right. So.
Fantastic. Well, this perfect place then to introduce this week's story from the One-to-One Diet Slimmer archive. Now, this week, we hear Teg Turner's powerful story. She was shortlisted for the One-to-One Diet's Woman of the Year Award. Let's take a look.
As a mental health nurse, Teg was used to caring for others, but had forgotten to look after herself. So she turned to food and alcohol as a comfort blanket.
I look after everyone else, but as time went on, I was looking after myself less. If I was happy, I'd eat. If I was sad, I would eat. So I was finishing work, I was like, I'm hungry, I need to eat. What can I get quickly? I didn't have the time to be making meals. I think looking back now, I realise how much my weight held me back from doing things like going out, socialising. When COVID hit in particular, that's when my anxiety really went through the roof. And that's where eating and alcohol would sort of then relieve my anxiety. I was like, I can't look after myself anymore. Like, how can I look after the patients on the ward?
At 21 stone and stuck in a vicious cycle of eating to suppress her anxiety, Teg wanted to take back control.
I just woke up one morning, it's like, I can't do this anymore. I chose Kirsty because she'd lost a big amount of weight and kept the weight off, and I wanted someone that had been through it, they understood. I wouldn't have done it without the support. I would have given up. As I've lost the weight and I found things like activity and exercise and lots of other ways of managing how I'm feeling, I don't have that constant anxiety.
After losing 10 stone 4.5 pounds and down 8 dress sizes, Teg feels happy and confident for the first time in years.
My energy levels improved, my sleep improved, and that's when I then started walking more and getting out and about and being more active. Like, I don't turn away any events or anything. I got a promotion at work, which I would never have gone for before. As I was existing before, I was just getting up, I was going through the motions, but now I'm living, I'm getting out and I'm enjoying my life.
Wow. Teg's story is absolutely amazing, isn't it, Mark? I mean, just incredible. Yeah. The things that she was referring to, so the blood pressure, the anxiety that she spoke about, sleep problems, fatty liver, all these things, do you see that quite often?
Yeah, and it's been increasingly a subject of a bunch of new research, and I've had to look into all those areas quite deeply. The blood pressure is the easiest one. Blood pressure goes down rapidly at the beginning of our diet, especially because you tend to get a more dramatic weight loss.
Interesting.
So the studies, they had to get people off their blood pressure medication at the outset, because they knew from some earlier trials that people would get up and they'd fall over again because their blood pressure would be too low. So the diet's actually more effective than the medication. And no one should change their medication. Let me just say.
No.
No one should ever change their medication unless they talk to their doctor.
Absolutely.
Always have to say the proviso there.
But be prepared to if you are going to lose a substantial amount of weight.
Work with your doctor to change or eliminate the They also got off their diabetes medication
That's
at
amazing,
the beginning of the trial, and their blood sugar got better. So, it can be done without medicine. It can be done.
It's so encouraging to know that. What about the anxiety? Because Teg was talking a lot about that. Obviously, she works as a mental health practitioner anyway, so that was quite interesting.
Yeah, anxiety is a big one, and it's probably mostly controlled by our gut bacteria. So anything you do, because that's where your serotonin's made and other aspects.
We think it's in our brain, don't we?
Yes.
But
the brain sends the signals, and more and more we're finding out the gut does a lot more of the heavy lifting than a lot of the other organs.
Yeah.
So the anxiety, we hear that quite a bit. And although the anxiety research doesn't definitively say gaining weight makes you more anxious, the correlation is definitely there. So the heavier someone is, the more likely they are to experience anxiety. And from what we see, I mean, we just had our Slimmer Awards where people, obviously like Teg, were losing, some people lose 15 stones. They lose more than a me.
Yeah.
I'm a pretty tall guy, and they lose more than a me.
Entire person's worth of weight, yeah.
Exactly. So we see at the Slimming Awards, I mean, people, they're different human beings afterwards. They're so elated. And that's a basic human principle of when you do something hard and you succeed.
Yes.
Nothing in the world,
Can't
and
beat
it doesn't
that.
have to be weight loss, anything like that's big that you've worked hard on and been consistent and done the grunt work and you get the outcome, that always makes people happier.
It's
that's
the
what we're
best
about.
feeling, isn't it, in the world?
Yeah.
And it's so difficult to replicate that with other things. But it's...
That's what we're all about at the end of the day, I think, probably. The sleep problems, we see that all the time. We've got studies showing that your sleep gets worse and then you gain weight, which makes your sleep worse, which means you gain weight.
Just a catch-22.
And then when we do a diet intervention, you get exactly the opposite. Sleep gets better, so you lose weight. So sleep gets better, so you lose.
And then you're wanting to exercise more.
You turn that circle
make
the other way.
Make healthier choices. It's just
and the sleep get. And we've also done studies with people with very severe sleep apneas who have to use the CPAP machines, these big,
horrible.
They look like gas masks. They have to sleep in them. It's very uncomfortable. Probably not great for their partner.
No.
But I think we got 26 out of the 30 subjects in the group that got our diet were able to very significantly improve, and many of them were able to get off their CPAP device and had normal sleep now.
Yeah.
So, and if you've been chronically sleep deprived or sleep interrupted, and then you get a couple of good nights sleep, anyone that's done that can tell you that changes things radically. You feel a lot better.
Yeah.
And that'll probably help with the anxiety. I
was going to say, and also anxiety will feed, if you're not sleeping well, that can make you more anxious. But likewise, if you're anxious, it's really hard to fall asleep as well because you're in that state of anxiety.
Because you can't stop your mind racing around.
No.
So I guess the liver and pancreas are probably the most interesting. Now, we did the DIRECT trial, and that was the biggest international trial that used nutrition to show that you can diet your way out of diabetes. You can literally, 46% of people.
Amazing.
Subsequent studies showed 61% of people.
Yeah.
So over half of people in these two big studies were able to reverse their diabetes. They no longer had diabetes, which is just remarkable for their future health outcomes. And their energy and things. So and the mechanism of action, the way that works is as you gain weight, and you don't necessarily have to be really big for this to happen. You might just have a little bit of a belly, and there's this visceral fat, fat in the deep gut, near the organs, and it finds its way into the liver and then the pancreas. Now, the liver is your production facility. The liver will take something and make it into something your body wants, or get rid of it, detoxify it, and then your kidney gets rid of it, or you get rid of it the other way. And then your pancreas is what actually makes the insulin. Almost all your insulin is made by the pancreas. So it doesn't take too much fat getting in the pancreas for that to stop making the insulin properly. So this is the mechanism. Right. It reverses the fatty liver, which is called NAFLD, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease.
Right, yes, because you can have one that is affected purely by alcohol as well. Yeah.
Yes, okay. and it's I think 24% of the world has non-alcoholic fatty liver disease.
Wow, that's a lot.
It used to be if they saw a fatty liver maybe 30, 40 years ago, they just assumed the person was an alcoholic.
But
and
that's
now,
not necessarily the case.
Well, the NAFLD is far more prevalent now than alcoholic fatty liver disease. So and that's something that they actually did pictures of the pancreas. And they've done this with the liver also, and they've shown that once you get rid of some of the fat, and again, this was done with our diet and the DIRECT study, people were reversing their diabetes, and that's how it works. Just make the organs work again.
Basically allow them to breathe again and do what they need to do almost. It's like they're not clogged up.
It's almost as simple as saying that.
I was going to say, it's so simple, yet
Sometimes the best solutions are simple.
Yeah, well, there's that.
Yeah.
So obviously Teg, as mental health practitioner, and she was talking about anxiety, and we've mentioned that already. So what about sort of health and well-being, mental health? How do we optimize that aspect of dieting? We've already spoken about sleep, which we know is really important for that.
Yeah, well, I can talk for, most of the studies I know are the ones we've done or similar studies, but the ones we've done, we've looked at outcomes like quality of life, which is you fill out a questionnaire, and some of the things it's how you get around, how you feel, your energy levels, and all these different things. So quality of life, the 5-year results of the direct study, because we did 1-year results, then 2-year results, then 5-year results. The 5-year results looked at quality of life and different disease rates.
Right.
And so disease, kidney problems, liver problems, metabolic issues, which are the things that lead to diabetes.
Yeah.
All of these things got better on the diet and had much lower rates in the group that got the diet than that didn't get the diet. They got normal care, so they get a specialist nurse or a dietitian counseling them. So everything got better, and the quality of life indicates again that this relationship between anxiety and being overweight is probably a legitimate one. And a lot of that goes back to inflammation. We've done some very we've done some gene-based studies on inflammation to see which genes get stimulated by weight loss.
Yeah.
And we've done other ones that look at more traditional inflammation things like C-reactive protein, which is the most common way to measure inflammation in the body. And it gets much better. And inflammation is associated with almost every bad health outcome, but also with anxiety and mental health problems.
Right.
So because we had a mental health week where we looked at this pretty. I had to do some homework for several weeks beforehand, as I often do, which I don't mind doing. I love doing it. So that's what we found all these interesting relationships, and it could just be that background inflammation that most people who don't have healthy lifestyles, whether they'll be overweight or not, if you're not exercising and your diet's not that great, you've got a baseline inflammation
it's sort of
level that's
simmering
higher.
away, isn't it? Just in the background, and sometimes
so your
you
doctor
don't
won't
know.
say, "Oh my gosh, your inflammation," because it's not high enough to be.
They're not looking at it yet.
To hit the threshold where your doctor's supposed to be concerned, but it's higher than it could be.
And the thing is, often when it does get to that threshold where people are going, "Oh, hang on a minute," generally that's when you start getting symptoms. Really, you want to hit things before it gets to that stage, don't you?
Yeah. I mean, preventative health care is just something that doesn't happen in most of the world today, unfortunately.
And it should.
Yeah.
Do you believe that as well? I believe that quite strongly. It's prevention.
Yeah. The diabetes thing. If they were to test fasting blood sugar. Instead of testing hemoglobin A1C, which is what they generally use, if they were testing fasting insulin, they would find out probably 5 to 10 years earlier who was most likely to get diabetes. So if they and if I know this, how is it that all the medical authorities don't give this test?
Exactly.
I mean, I know it. I mean, I'm not a genius. How do I know something?
I think you are quite clever, to be fair. I mean,
I'll let people make up their own minds about that.
A thing or two.
But yeah, I mean, and there's a lot of things like that we could be doing. That would be the canary in the coal mine 5-10 years before we now get it, because now we just wait for this threshold to happen.
Yeah.
And a lot of the damage has been done by now.
Absolutely.
And it's not just
on
the
so
damage
many
has
things.
been done.
Yeah.
It's now the person's adopted a lifestyle.
Yeah.
And once you have all these habits,
change that.
Everyone knows how hard habits are to break. We all have our habits that we can't break.
Well, exactly. And the older we get, the harder it is,
exactly.
And it takes a lot more.
So in every possible way, you could
start
and
early.
we were talking about Peter Attia, and he's very into the preventative model, but unfortunately you probably have to pay him a couple of $100,000 a year to be one of his patients.
Absolutely. So, you could just listen to podcasts or listen to our podcast, which is just as informative, Mark, with you here, of course.
At least.
What I wanted to ask you, just what is your regime like? What protocols do you adopt when it comes to sort of obviously what you eat, but also just well-being and health?
Well, to show I'm not a hypocrite, basically, I'd say 99.8% of the meals I've eaten and snacks I've eaten in the last 5 years have had at least a substantial, if not most of their calories from protein.
Yeah. Okay.
So just to show I'm not a hypocrite, I put protein in everything, and I never have a problem with my hunger. I will generally not eat breakfast.
Oh, really?
Just because I don't think everyone should skip breakfast, but for me, it just allows me a longer window of not eating. And as you get older, you should have...
So that time-restricted feeding
ish.
thing.
I don't do it that intentionally. I just eat when I get hungry in the day. And if I've worked out in the morning, that getting hungry starts earlier than it does if I haven't worked out.
In goes the protein.
Yeah. And that way, as you get older, you need bigger servings of protein to... I'm closer to 60 than I am to 50. So I need to up my protein at each sitting. So that helps really, really well. I eat mostly meat, fruit, some fish. I'll have a fish oil supplement if I haven't had fish for X number of days or whatever.
And that's for the omega-3, of course.
Yeah. And I'll have eggs and cheese. I'll have bacon and eggs in the morning on most Saturdays and Sundays, especially if I've got my kids.
All right.
It's a protein heavy. I get more calories from fat than carbs. Sometimes I'll carb up. If my carbs go too low, I get a little bit of cramping sometimes. So I've got a little alarm system set up in my body, and I know, I got a calf cramp. I didn't
know
carbs have gone too low.
So can you actually get cramp? Because I always thought that was more to do with your electrolyte balance, maybe.
It is, but your electrolytes get retained by your kidney, and your kidney only decides to retain them to a certain degree or not based on how much insulin your body's secreting. So if you aren't secreting enough insulin often enough, then you are likely to be eliminating too many of your electrolytes, mostly sodium, but also magnesium, potassium, calcium.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So that's quite important. So when people really are quite anti-carb, you need to bear in mind that actually they do have a function. They are important for energy as well.
Well, this is where the personalized nutrition thing comes in. There are people, and there's a lady that's been doing it for 30 years. There are people now, you've probably heard of the carnivore diet. There are people literally just eating meat, salt, and water. And some people get along, and some people are remarkably fit. And that's all they eat. Because theoretically, they shouldn't be getting all the nutrients.
No.
It shouldn't be
quite
impossible.
restrictive. Yeah.
It shouldn't be possible to not just to thrive, but to live, because you should be getting nutrient deficiency.
Yeah.
What seemingly happens, the best theory is that you don't need as many of certain vitamins and minerals if you're not getting carbs.
Right.
And actually, if you think about human evolution, we've got most of our calories from animal sources on a daily basis for the last 250, 300,000 years since we've been Homo sapiens.
Yeah.
So it actually makes maybe more sense that we should be getting more of these things. I get a little upset with the vegan messages because there's a lot of research that shows it's probably not that good for you, really, and including your mental health.
Well, yeah, I think it's because a lot of the things that come up as these sort of meat replacement, that's where a lot of the issue comes up, because then you're talking about quite ultra processed things rather than, I think, the plants, eating actual plants is a good thing that everybody should be doing. But I think the vegan message has probably gone a little bit too. For most people, it's going to lead to some problems, and especially because there's certain things you simply can't get that are essential nutrients. That's so interesting though, what you said about the cramping. So if you going back to your regime, if you get a little bit of a cramp, you up your carbs, do you?
Yeah, I just get I'll increase them, and I use the salt that's 66% potassium. So I use a bit of that salt and a bit of the regular salt.
Interesting.
Just so I get enough potassium.
What's that salt?
It's called low salt. There's two
I
or
see. So it's
three
more
of them.
Potassium.
One is 1/3 potassium and 2/3
so that's
sodium.
something we can look for.
Yeah, and the other one's I think 2/3 potassium and 1/3 sodium. But I use salt also because it's usually sodium. That's the problem. It's usually
I was going to say, for blood pressure,
calcium.
we were talking about blood pressure, so surely people need to be watching their salt intake, though.
Sodium, only a minority of people are sodium sensitive when it comes to blood pressure. So that's and again, this is where they have these blanket recommendations. Everyone should eat less sodium. Having too little sodium has consequences also. And a lot of people these days, you'd be surprised to learn how many people are getting not that much sodium and could probably use more.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow, okay. And then what about exercise?
Yeah, I try to hit the gym 6 days a week. Have
That's
been for
impressive.
years.
Yeah.
I can't really do anything, dangerous anymore. I used to play all kinds of sports. I did the Fitbit, which was kind of like a before CrossFit, where you do weights and then you do cardio, and they time you. I came 12th out of 4,000 people.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Wow.
I was a lot younger then. I was a lot younger then. I couldn't do it now. I couldn't even finish it now.
I bet you could. I bet you do a lot better than a lot of people. That's very impressive. So you're keeping up with your fitness.
Yeah. I'll never be at that level of fitness again.
Athletic,
but I try to keep reasonably good shape.
Yeah.
Weights and cardio, a little bit of HIIT. Got to go easy on the HIIT these days again because I'm just got old creaky joints.
You've got to be careful of injuries, haven't you?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
So that's
and any other sort of little tips for sort of quick win nutrition tips, particularly for our listeners?
Yeah, I mean, if you're probably everyone should take creatine monohydrate.
I'm so glad you said that. I had that in my coffee this morning.
Good. Now you'll gain a little bit of weight with creatine. It won't be fat. It'll be water weight. Some people
slightly annoyed me when I weighed myself, and I thought, hang on a minute, and then I thought, hang on, creatine every day. 5 grams.
Well, and if you get a tape measure, you won't have gained that weight around the places you don't want it. You'll have gained it probably in your muscles, your muscle bellies, and things like that. So that's not just for bodybuilders. It doesn't just make you a little bit stronger and have a little bit better endurance in the gym. It can be good for gut health.
Yes,
they've done studies with people with IBD, irritable bowel disease, not syndrome, disease. So Crohn's and colitis gets better, at least in rats, with creatine. We talk about vegans, when they give vegans creatine, because you can only get creatine from meat and fish.
Oh, interesting.
When they give vegans creatine, they get 50% smarter as far as measures of recall and mental performance.
We're not saying that they're stupid in the first place.
No, we're just saying that by being a vegan, you're leaving some mental performance on the table.
Well, it is good for your brain, isn't it?
You can make up for some of that deficiency.
Because it is good for your brain. That's the other thing they're saying, isn't it? Brain health.
It's good for traumatic brain injury. People that get really bad, like rugby players, if they get a concussion, if they have a good sport nutritionist, that sport nutritionist, if they're not already taking creatine, which they should
probably
be,
are.
They take that, or they'd up the dosage.
That's really interesting. So that's powerful stuff. And that's just a supplement, isn't it? And it's quite a cheap supplement.
Creatine has no downside. It's cheap. It's utterly safe. Been used by millions of people for 20, 30 years now. It's good for you in so many different ways. It's a total no-brainer.
Like I said, I put it in my coffee. It doesn't taste of anything, so I just whack it in there. Any other nutrition tips then before we?
I mean, like I said, if I'm not eating fish enough, I'll eat an omega-3 product. It'll always be a fish oil product, not flax, because your body's very inefficient at converting the vegetable or seed-based oils into the long-chain omega-3s that mammals need to use. So if you get it from fish, it's already in the form you need, DHA and EPA, so docosahexaenoic acid and eicosapentaenoic acid.
Right.
So so make sure you get a fish oil supplement that has a lot of those.
Okay.
So it's highly concentrated, but also check if they've done the mercury tests for mercury and other heavy metals, because a lot of fish these days, a lot of pescatarians are getting lead poisoning and like they'll be having trouble and they'll eventually get the blood test. A lot of cases they probably never get the blood test.
No.
But they'll find out that they have remarkably high lead and cadmium and mercury levels. Yeah.
I need to go and get a test, I think, a heavy metal test.
I think probably everyone should. If you eat a lot of fish, you should. Yeah.
Interesting. I'm gonna look into that.
Actually. I'd say, obviously, unless your diet's fairly well, it's got a lot of broad spectrum foods and things, most people should have a good multivitamin. A lot of the studies on multivitamins aren't positive, but a lot of multivitamins aren't actually that good. So it's difficult research to look into, but I think especially for people who don't have a particularly good diet and they know it, it's good insurance. Yeah.
I sometimes do it as well if I know that I'm very, very busy and I might not be able to get all the nutrition I would normally do. And if I'm traveling and things, I will have a kit with me of supplements. And I just think at least, and a greens powder sometimes, that's when I'll use it because I just think at least I know then I'm getting something in case I'm missing it.
That's the thing with it. It goes back to that planning thing. If you have backups, like I always keep, I keep a bunch of the bars from the company in my rucksack. So if I don't have food,
brilliant idea.
Or if I'm too lazy to make my breakfast and I'm going to have breakfast the next day because I'm going to the gym in the morning, I'll have a product instead if I'm too lazy to make my breakfast.
Because you're going to get everything at least you need.
So I know I've got at least I've got a third of my vitamins and minerals there, and I know it's got quality protein, and quality protein is important too. The quality protein means it has more of the essential amino acids, and the reason they're called essential amino acids is because those are the ones we need in our diet.
Well, I could literally sit here and talk to you for another, 5 episodes worth, quite frankly, breaking down each of the different things, because you were talking about collagen and that's a whole other thing. It's been brilliant talking to you. So much good advice in there and some really handy tips that people can adopt and some simple things as well that people can do. So Very, very enjoyable, Mark. Thank you so much.
Thanks. It was lovely talking to you. Yeah. And it was a great session. It flowed very naturally, and I enjoyed it. Yeah.
Good. Brilliant. Well, that is it. Really interesting stuff. So informative. I hope you agree. And lots of tips in there that you can take away. I know I'll be taking away for myself as well. Mark, one final thing. If people want to find you on the socials or anything, where can they go?
I don't know all my social tags offhand, but if you Google Muscle Diet Mark, or if you just Google Mark Gilbert Nutrition, you're probably going to find me pretty easily.
You'll pop up.
Yeah,
brilliant.
I'll be there somewhere. Yeah,
fantastic. Well, thank you so much once again for coming in on to the podcast. It's been brilliant.
I had a lovely time. Thank you.
My thanks again to Mark Gilbert, today's guest, nutritionist for the One-to-One Diet by Cambridge Weight Plan. And you can find all his links, along with information on everything else we've covered in the show notes. Don't forget to get in touch with us on the socials so that we can give you a shout out in a future episode. And also, please do like and subscribe on your favourite podcast platform and tell us what you'd like to hear on another edition of the show. That is it for today. So please do stay healthy, and I will see you next time for another episode of The Feel Good Factor.